All right, well, hello everyone. As you're coming in and getting connected, one of the things that's terrific, we're realizing as we look at names, the names on the list, and as people are signing in, is we have a number of Kenyon-Copenhagen parents who are attending. So hello to you, and hello to everyone else who's here. I'm Sarah Heidt. I'm Associate Professor of English at Kenyon. And I am one of the 4 resident co-directors of the Kenyon-Copenhagen program. I'm going to let my colleagues who are helping me with this presentation tonight introduce themselves. And then we have a slideshow and some things to tell you, and we are hoping to leave lots of time for questions as well. So if you have questions, please get ready to ask them, and we will. And I hope this presentation will both be enlightening and also maybe create a chance for conversation. Right. So again, I'm Sarah Heidt. I've been teaching at Kenyon since 2004, and just very excited to be not only here and in Copenhagen for this program, but also here on this Zoom call with all of you.
Everyone, I'm Sergei Lobanov-Rostovsky. I'm a professor of English, and I'm also one of the co-resident directors here in Copenhagen. You can see Copenhagen behind me. Unfortunately, this is just wallpaper, so it's not quite that bright outside at the moment. We're thick into the Danish night at the moment. But it gives you at least a little sense of some of the beautiful things that our students are seeing.
Right. Hi, everyone. I'm Annie. I am a program assistant for the Kenyon-Copenhagen program. So I'm living with 20 of the students at Basecamp South Campus. The 30 other students live at Basecamp North Campus. I graduated from Kenyon in 2020, and I studied with DIS in the spring of 2019. So I'm very happy to be back here, working for 2 programs that I love, Kenyon and DIS. So yeah.
Okay, so I am going to, we're grateful that we have not had to be Zoom teaching all year long, but using my Zoom teaching skills to bring you in on a presentation that I've built and that we're going to talk through. And recognizing that we're hoping that part of the reason you're here tonight is that this program sounds very cool and you want to know more about it. And so when you think about Copenhagen, you may think about Norham, the area that's pictured here, and that's also in Sergei's background. Canals, bridges, boats, domes, architecture, bicycles. We had not planned to be in Copenhagen this fall. Sergei and I were supposed to be on sabbatical. And in mid-May, right, the end of the spring semester, we had a meeting with Provost Jeff Bowman and the director for the Center for Global Engagement, Martin Ossig, who let us know that the college had gone into a pretty serious over-enrollment situation, which was great news for Kenyon, and also meant that there were not enough spaces for everyone to live on campus. And that one of the solutions that they had come up with was to create a program in Copenhagen that would be a first semester, a launch into Kenyon in Copenhagen. And because Sergei and I did not have students registered for courses because we were supposed to be on sabbatical, and because we both had a lot of experience running the Kenyon Exeter program, which we've both done a number of times, and because English 103, the courses that we always teach a section of English 103 is a very popular first year course, it felt like this was a kind of a match that could work. And so we decided to postpone our sabbaticals and come to Copenhagen. And the initial ask was, was that each of us would teach a section of English 103. We would have 25 to 30 students in a cohort. And basically this would be, it felt like it could be a version of the Kenyon Exeter program, but for first years and in a different place. And one of the reasons this was exciting to us was that the Kenyon College Mission had just been revised in February 2020 and is now, if anybody remembers the old mission statement, it used to be about 2 pages long. Now it's this pithy and powerful statement that at Kenyon, we build strong foundations for lives of purpose and consequence. We harness the transformative power of a liberal arts education, engaging in spirited, informed, and collaborative inquiry to form a deeper, more nuanced understanding of the world and all who inhabit it. And Kenyon had also just announced this spring its next strategic plan, which is the foundation for Kenyon's 3rd century, the first priority of which is to continue strengthening rigorous learning in a global context and strengthening the international aspects of Kenyon's academic program. That has typically happened at the 3rd year, right, at the junior level. But this program offered the possibility of experimenting with global education in a different way at a different point in the Kenyon career. And so Kenyon's by no means the first school to create a first-year study abroad program. NYU has a program, a liberal studies first-year away program that happens in 4 different places. So Florence, Madrid, London, and Washington, DC. Colby College has a study away program for the first semester. Wake Forest actually has a program that is here in Copenhagen, run through DIS, the same place that we're based in. It's called the Global Awakenings Program, and that's a year-long program. So there was precedent for this, but Kenyon hadn't done it. And we had a strong relationship with DIS because it's one of the providers that we've had a lot of students have great experiences with in the past. And they have a very strong support team for creating custom programs and study tour experiences. So this felt like a good fit. We said yes, and then things got even more interesting than we could have imagined. I'll let Sergey talk a little bit about what happened next.
So one of the things that happened next, I think, is that a lot of students who had been in pandemic lockdown saw this offer and got very excited about it. Going to Copenhagen for their first semester, in a sense, opened the door to the opposite of what pandemic lockdown had been for those students. This was a chance to come back out into the world and to come out into the world in a kind of way that is simultaneously both structured in the sense that it's Kenyon. We are teaching them as we would teach classes at Kenyon, but also, setting them free to begin to explore more broadly what their horizons are going to be. The way I thought about it at the time, and it seems to me that it's still true, is that this presented itself as a potential solution to a crisis, an over-enrollment crisis. Where are we going to house all these students who want to come to Kenyon? And arguably, I think people deciding to come to Kenyon were very excited to come to Kenyon this year for the same kind of reason. That is that coming out of pandemic lockdown, I think a lot of students wanted a real, absolutely like sort of picture perfect college experience. And that's what Kenyon offers them. So I think that the same impulse drove Kenyon's enrollment as drove the enrollment of this program. But it also offered us, just as every crisis is also an opportunity, it offered us this opportunity to think about the role of international study in a liberal arts education, and to think about it, in a way that would serve to launch a Kenyon education rather than to reinforce the things as traditional study abroad programs in the junior year have typically done, and to give. Our perception, coming back from the Exeter program, which both Sarah and I have directed multiple times, has always been that our students come back transformed. They are transformed by their experience. They come back more polished, more engaged, recognizing that something about their education resonates with their international experience is crucially important, that it makes what it can sometimes seem abstract when you're just doing it in a college in America, it makes it very real, that you begin to experience things in a way that is immediate and exciting and real. And I think that that's happening. We are observing that those kinds of things are happening for our students here as well. So it gives us a chance to relaunch them into the world, and at the same time to give them a sort of a wonderful head start before they go back to Kenyon in the spring and resume their Kenyon education as regular on-campus students. And this might be a good point for us to talk about sort of the academic structure of the program. And I believe, Sarah, you have a slide for that?
I do. And so one of the things that happened early in the summer is that we went from having 2 co-directors, Sergey and me, to having 4. And Associate Professor of Psychology, Irene Lopez, and Professor of Environmental Studies, Rob Alexander, came on board, and we set the academic program, which is structured this way. All students who are on this program take one Kenyon course taught by one of the 4 of us, and that's their core course. All the students are taking DIS's Danish language and culture course. And in that course, they're mixed together with other DIS students. They're not just with Kenyon students. And then they take 3 courses from this list of DIS electives. And what happened early in the summer is that those of us who were coming over here, along with members of faculty governance and the college registrar and the dean for academic advising, went through the DIS course list and found courses that seemed like they would be appropriate for first-year students, or could be appropriate for first-year students, and would fulfill some of the distribution requirements, or get students started on fulfilling some of the distribution requirements that the college has for them, but would also give them sort of unique course experiences that they wouldn't have at Kenyon. So for instance, gender and sexuality in Scandinavia is not a course that we have at Kenyon. Gender and perspectives on human rights, we have courses on human rights, we have courses on gender. We don't necessarily have them exactly together that way. Students are getting a chance to study environmental studies in a couple of different ways. Students who are interested in creative writing have been able to do a travel writing course this semester. We have the most highly populated course of all of these turned out to be the European Art of the 19th Century course, which is like half the program is on it. And so these are classes that are being taught by DIS faculty to our students at the first year level. And so that has been what?
Sorry, just going to jump in and say one of the things that seemed crucially important to us was that some of these courses really offered opportunities for things that expand wonderfully on the kinds of things that we're able to do at Kenyon. I would point out, for example, the politics and ethics of food. As many of you may know, Copenhagen is one of the great food cities of the world at this moment. But it's also a place that, in a sense, is deeply concerned with not just food as a kind of like a consumer good, something that is part of the pleasure of living in a wonderful city like this, but also food as a kind of ethical question. How do you feed the world? How do you do it in a way that is environmentally sound? Some of the environmental studies courses here offer opportunities for students to experience things firsthand that are just not available in Central Ohio. And so, environmental solutions that are being imagined and put into practice here in Copenhagen, or more broadly in Denmark, that they can see, and we'll have some slides that will make some of that clear to you. So what we were doing when we chose these courses was to look for ways to allow our students to do things here in Denmark that build on what they will be able to do at Kenyon, but also expand those parameters.
Okay, so I am going to hit return on a link that is in the chat, which is the link to the Kenyon-Copenhagen website that you'll see referenced on this slide. And let me close that again. Can't make my chat go away. All right, well, it'll just be there. So we have 3 core courses happening. The 2 sections of an English 103 called Making a Life in the World. It's a version of a class that I have taught at Kenyon that I designed as a first-year seminar, geared toward helping students use literary texts and discussion of literary texts to think about how to make their lives, and how writers have sort of reckoned with the process of life making in all kinds of literal and metaphorical ways. And so we have expanded that course so that it has a more global dimension, and that is the course that Sergey and I are teaching. And then Professor Alexander is teaching a version of Environmental Studies 112, Introduction to Environmental Studies, and Professor Lopez is teaching a version of Psych 100, Introduction to Psychology. One of the things that's really terrific for students in both the environmental studies and psychology classes is that they're getting much smaller and more seminar style versions of those courses than they would be getting if they were in Gambier, where those are larger intro courses. So the English courses are also a little smaller than they would be at Kenyon, but that's a difference of 4 people as opposed to a difference of like 20 or 30 people. So I don't want to spend, I don't want us to spend too much of our time tonight sort of going through every single detail about the program. But if you do want to read more details about the program, the link I just put in the chat will take you to the Kenyon-Copenhagen website. And there's a link in there to the fact sheet that was the frequently asked questions that it was part of the summer communication with prospective participants. I really want to make this, I have this chat window in the middle of my screen that I cannot make disappear. So what happened over the summer was we went through an abbreviated, sort of a shortened process or a fast process of getting students who were interested in Kenyon-Copenhagen to identify themselves and deciding, who could go, who had a passport, who could get a passport, and coming up with the list of DIS elective courses. A core team of Gambier-based faculty assembled as advisors for students just for the process of getting them sort of into DIS courses and sort of getting registered for the fall. And then over July and early August, we did a series of info sessions over Zoom that included brief readings and some reflective writing assignments that were for students and families. But really by mid-July, like we were trying to get them to be really focused on students so that we could get to know students and students could start thinking about the process of coming to Copenhagen and of travel itself through a liberal arts or in a liberal arts way. So in a moment, I'll show you one of the slides that we used as a kind of discussion kickoff in one of our Zoom sessions, but we also had the students thinking about making observations of the spaces where they lived and getting ready to make a lot of observations about the process of traveling both to Washington, D.C. for the Kenyon-Copenhagen orientation that took place there in August, and then also to Copenhagen. And that travel happened in mid-August. So by August 18th, students were heading to DC for orientation. Some of you on this, actually many of you on this call were there. And then all of the students flew to Copenhagen together with, all but a couple of students flew to Copenhagen together with Maren Osick and Samantha Hughes. So Maren is the director for the Center for Global Engagement, and Samantha Hughes is the Civil Rights and Title IX coordinator, and at that point was the interim VP for Student Affairs. And so one of the things that we had students looking at was this passage from Alain de Botton's book, The Art of Travel, and trying to get them to think about, as he says towards the end of this this piece, the way that thinking about the art of travel is, in a sense, thinking about what it is to have a good life, not just sort of where to go, but why and how we should go. And so this became one of our touchstones early on with the students. Okay. And now I'm going to turn things over to Annie. And so the students are living in, as she mentioned, in collegiums. One is in central Copenhagen, one is South Campus, is on the island of Amo. And students are traveling to class either on public transport or on their bicycles, and many of them have become quite intrepid cyclists. And Annie has a great dual perspective or a triple perspective actually in this situation, because she's a Kenyon alum, she's a DIS alum, and she's also the person who is like sort of most up close with the students on a daily basis. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let Annie come front and center to tell us about her experience.
Great. Yes. Thank you, Sarah. Yep. So for those of you who joined after my introduction, I'm Annie. I'm working as a program assistant here in Copenhagen. Graduated from Kenyon in 2020. And I did DIS the spring of 2019. At Kenyon, I studied political science. And here at DIS, I studied European politics, which was during the time of Brexit. So it was very interesting. And what I loved most about DIS was that it was kind of like an extension off of Kenyon, where it involves students and faculty that are very, very engaged in the classroom. And what was really cool about it was that you were able to do things outside of the classroom that you were very passionate about studying. So for example, I studied the EU. So my class was able to travel to Brussels for a week, and I was able to interview a Turkish ambassador to the EU, which was the coolest thing in the world. And as much as I love Gambia, usually that stuff doesn't really happen there. So it's just awesome to be here in Copenhagen and have those opportunities to travel. And as Sarah mentioned, I do live in a collegium with 20 of the Kenyon first years. We live on the island of Amma, which is about 15 minutes on bike ride away from the DIS campus. And then the 30 other students live at base camp Solgel, which is about 20 minutes away from us and 10 minutes from DIS. So a lot of my role entails, implicating social activities that are kind of similar to what would happen at Kenyon, like during the fall. So some of the things that we've done are cooking workshops, teaching students how to cook, because they do have to cook on their own here, which has been a learning curve, but also really fun experience kind of just doing those things. Because even my first year at Kenyon, I never had to do that because of Pierce. So kind of adapting to that and different roles here at DIS, kind of implementing more independence, and also just a lot of one-on-one meetings with students, making sure they're adjusting okay. Because when I was going to Kenyon my freshman year, I was nervous about going to Gambia, Ohio. So I couldn't even imagine what these students were thinking about going to Copenhagen, Denmark. So I'm kind of here as a liaison just between the students, the faculty, as well as people who work for DIS, and also Kenyon. So if they have any questions about classes, time management, how to balance social life, things like that, I'm kind of their go-to. And yeah, that's been a lot of my role here. Something we recently done was pumpkin carving at the base camp location with all the students, and that was a lot of fun. The person who delivered the pumpkins said he had never delivered 50 pumpkins before, but there's a first time for everything, I suppose. And we've also been going to Tivoli, and actually next week we're going to be going to a theater performance in Copenhagen that 2 of the students have been volunteering with. So we're very excited, and that's been a lot of my role here at DIS. And yeah, I think that's about it, unless I wanted to mention anything more. Sarah, am I missing anything?
No, I think that's that is that. And so, but all 3 of us are going to kind of come together as we go through. Like I realize many of you may have come to see pictures and see what's been happening. I think in some ways this might be the most exciting part of this event. And so here's the pumpkin carving that Annie just described. One of the things that's been great about being here is that DIS has a different academic calendar and a unique academic calendar compared to Kenyon's. We don't just go for 14 weeks here. The way that DIS has things set up that we have dived into all the way is to have a core course week in mid-September. For us, it was in mid-September, where there was nothing happening but stuff connected to the Kenyon courses. And so we used the 4 of us used that week to create some day trips for our individual courses, and then 2 full group trips. There also are field studies. Every course at DIS gets 2 field study days over the course of the semester. So we had one in late September, and we'll have another one in early December. And those are 4-hour blocks on Wednesdays where we had activities organized through our individual courses. So we have some images from those to show you. And then in mid-October, from October 11th to 15th, all 4 of our courses took 5-day trips through Denmark that were organized by DIS for our individual courses. And so a lot of the images that we're about to show you come from those trips. Among the 3, or from the 3 of us here, we have 3 of the study tours represented. So we'll tell you some stories and show you some things. So this may be one thing that you picture when you picture a classroom. Like got students working diligently. This was the first day of class in my section of English 103. Students working in pairs, students working at boards around the classroom, discussing the things that they had done for their homework. At DIS, this is also the classroom. So this is an image from our late September field study trip to the Arken Museum of Modern Art in just south of Copenhagen. So this is the 2 Making a Life sections, the 2 English courses, getting a guided tour of an exhibit. And it also can look like this. So these are students from Irene Lopez's course, her psychology course, at a playground in Nordport, in one of the neighborhoods in Copenhagen. They're doing the Ohio, right? They're posing as Ohio. And this was part of a sensory day that she organized for them as part of core course week. This too is part of the sensory day that she organized for them during core course week. So here's one of Irene's students, Sam, making his way into the water because they were plunging into the harbor, partly to learn about the body's stress response, and also to really get fully immersed, as it were, in Copenhagen and Danish culture.
This might be a moment just to point out that if you go back to that picture, Sarah, if you haven't thought about it, imagine what it is to plunge into a Danish harbor in September or early October. It's very cold. The senses really are stimulated by this. So they had a profound experience of sensory overload.
So that was what the psychology students were doing. While they were doing that, Sergey and I had our 2 sections in Elsinore because we were about to start reading Hamlet. And so we had a guided tour of Elsinore. So here are the students listening to the tour, and here they are looking at the castle that is part of the inspiration for Hamlet, even though Shakespeare was never here. So thinking about architecture and power and drama, there was a chance for students to act, right? So to act out parts of Act 1 of Hamlet. Here on, it's not quite it's not dark and stormy, but in fact very bright and sunny. So not exactly what Hamlet so the way that King Hamlet might have shown up as a ghost. However, was still very evocative, right? So a chance for learning out in the world. This too was a part of our field study. This too was our classroom. We took our students not only to Elsinore, but also to the Louisiana Museum of Art. So here are two of my students reviewing some of what they had seen. And this is an art museum that's right, sort of perched right on the coast. It is very beautiful. And this was a space where students had basically just hours to spend in the museum on their own. And we gave them an assignment to make their way through the museum and find a piece of art that really spoke to them, and then spend an hour with it, just making observations about that piece of art. And it was kind of wonderful when we went around the museum looking to try to find them, see what they were looking at. We would find students kind of tucked into a corner, curled up, making notes furiously, or just sitting quietly and contemplating the thing that they were drawn to. And the writings that came out of this particular day of the core course week were really beautiful. like really, those of you who are related to students who are on this program, you have wonderful, not even children, young adults in your lives. Like they're brilliant. So Professor Alexander had his students, as part of Core Course Week, take a tour of the neighborhood Norham, which is in the north of Copenhagen, and is not entirely a construction site, but a lot of it is a construction site. It's a very fast growing area. It's an area that has some really innovative environmental thinking going on. It's sort of a space where you can really see the city changing rapidly. You can see the sort of this white building that's on the sort of top right here is the UN. So this is another space that some of our students have made their way to as part of field studies. We did a couple of full group trips that week, including to Roskilde, to the Viking ship museum. So here are students learning about Viking ships and the small bits of those ships that have survived, and the ways they survived, and the ways they've been sort of reconstructed. So here's another view of our tour guide. We did another full group trip to Moon's Clint, which is a series of cliffs on the island of Moon. And so this was a chance for everybody to spend some time in a really sublime landscape. One of the things about Copenhagen is that it's largely flat. And so to get a chance to be around cliffs and to get high viewpoints and vistas is pretty terrific. So here are two students enjoying the view. And then this is jumping now to the end of September and field studies. Again, we took our students to the Arkin Museum of Art. And then Annie, we're jumping to the study tours now. Where are you all and what are you doing here?
Yes, so we are I'm not fluent in Danish, but I'll try my best. It's Østerparken. And this is actually very close to where the students at Base Camp Solgel live. So this is a huge park in the city of Copenhagen, and we were on a bat safari, which intrigued so many students that other students from the Kenyon core courses came along too. So we had a good group with us. And the person speaking there is a faculty at DIS, and she studies bats and bat migration for a living, which is so cool. So she knew everything. She was even wearing a shirt. You can't really see it, but it says Bats of the UK, and it had bats all over it with like their different names underneath. So that evening we walked around the park, had like the bat sonar devices with us. So we were listening for bat signals and trying to follow them in the trees, which was just super cool because I didn't even know that we had so many here in Copenhagen. So yeah, that's what we were doing there with the environmental studies course.
And so this was actually during Core Course Week. I put it in the wrong place in this show, right?
Yes, it was. But we did a lot of cool stuff during study tour as well.
Okay, some of that is coming up. So as you see your study tour come in, please feel free to jump in and say what's going on here, for instance.
Sure. Yeah. So this was at the Yelling Stones, which some of the students called the Screaming Stones, but Yelling is with the J. And these are the original like tombs that the Vikings used to mark their graves as well as hide treasures that weren't end up being found, but that's kind of a spoiler if you do go on the tour in the future. And this was a part of our long study tour week for our study tour, and there will be pictures later on in the slideshow, but we traveled throughout Denmark, which was really cool because even sometimes students at DIS, they don't really realize how much there is outside of Copenhagen. And the Kenyon students really got to experience that by going Copenhagen to Samsø, which is an island. So we took the ferry. Then we went up to Aarhus, and then we went to Ribe, which is the oldest town in Denmark. And that's where the Yelling Stones were located right near. So yeah, and we had a very passionate tour guide, which always makes things a lot more fun.
You'll see more pictures of Ribe as we go along. My group started near the city of Udenza, which is where Hans Christian Andersen is from. Our first stop was actually a castle called Aeskov. So here we are at the castle bright and early on on the first day of our study tour. And then after a lunch at a street food market, your students have eaten at a lot of street food markets this year. We made our way to the cathedral there. And so one of my DIS colleagues, Bettina, walked students through some of the things that they were going to see in the cathedral. And so here, got a couple of views of observing within the cathedral. And then also we did a walking tour of Udenza and saw the birthplace of Hans Christian Andersen. Sergei's group went to the new Hans Christian Andersen Museum. We were there on a day when it was closed, so we didn't get to go to it. But this is, if you are an Andersen fan, here is an image of his birthplace. This is in the city of Rava, which is the next, as Annie mentioned, the oldest town in Denmark. This is the cathedral, and many students looking at the cathedral. And then this is us on top of, or a few of us on top of the cathedral. So we climbed the tower. One of the things that I was almost tempted to make a joke tonight about taking students to new heights, or the program reaching new heights. One of the things that, as I was putting these together, that I kept running into is the number of tall things we have all gotten to climb and look out from together, which has been kind of wonderful. It would be as though we got to climb Pierce Tower and all look out together, which is not a thing that classes do at Kenyon. So here we are looking out over Western Denmark, looking out toward the Wadden Sea, which is an incredible UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's an enormous salt flat and coastline that's really important for migratory birds. It has an incredible tide. And so this is a place that 3 of the 4 study tours went to. We got a lot of experience with tide pole, or with storm surge poles in the west of Denmark. So these poles where you can see the height of flooding that came in, and this is a good ways inland where this pole is in the city of Rava. So this is our other DIS, my other DIS colleague who was on the study tour that my group went on, Nina, who gave us a translation that she has done of a recent work of Danish literature called Bird Flight. That's about about a young woman returning to Rava, which is where she's from, and one of the places that she writes about is the storm surge pole. And so she was explaining this to us, and then she read to us from her translation of this book, Bird Flight, which was really wonderful. And the trip to the Wadden Sea for my group was largely kind of contemplative, and involved sort of going out to the water's edge and kind of ending the day there. The other two of the other groups, so Professor Alexander's group and Sergei's group, both spent more time at the Wadden Sea Center, which is the sort of the visitor center and resource center that's there at the edge of the sea, and also did some great expeditions to go out and fish for shrimp. Sergei, do you want to talk about this?
Sure, yeah. I mean, as you can see, this is a massive sort of salt flat here, and we all got to put on our waders and go out there and take these nets and scoop up. They were sort of given instructions on how to go about scooping up all the various kinds of small sea life that you find living in these tidal flats. At which point then we would bring them back to our guide, who was from the Wadden Sea Center, who would sort of sort them out in a bucket and introduce them to all of the different species that were there. And in certain cases, I don't know if you have that slide next, Sarah. In certain cases, there we go, yeah. On the left, some of our students decided to sample some of the local delicacies, little shrimp, little mussels, oysters, coming straight in effect out of the sea. And it's an experience that is hard to describe, just how sort of intense it is to be out there, in effect catching these things and then being able to sort of eat them directly out of there. So,
and Andy, I know these are a couple of pictures from the environmental studies group, and I wasn't sure whether this fire was actually directly connected to the Wadden Sea trip, so I put it here, but I may have created a narrative misleading can you tell us what is happening in these images?
Yes, of course. So the image on the left is from the Water and Sea. That was with the Rob Alexander's group, Environmental Studies. That's who I went on a long study tour with, just some students being silly. And it was also very surprising how many students knew sea shanties on that trip, which was a lot of fun. A lot of them were singing while we were out on the water, which was just really fun. The picture on the right is actually not connected to that, but that is a bonfire event that we had here in Copenhagen. I bought some firewood and things to have a bonfire, and we also made snowbrød, which is Danish dough that you put around a stick and roast over a fire. And we also did s'mores for people who maybe didn't want to try the snowbrød. And it was a beautiful evening. We got very, very lucky with the weather, and it was right on the beach. And everyone sang some more sea shanties and other songs as well around the fire. It was beautiful.
Well, I'm sorry that I've got this in here out of order, so everyone can just reorder. Please reorder your memories so that they're what Annie just told us. And I wanted to show, like, with this, these I think were happening almost at the same time. While Sergei's group was eating shrimp, my group had moved on to the city of Aarhus, and we were about to go through the cathedral. We visited the gender museum there, which was terrific. But before we moved on to there, my group, so my group and Sergei's group both got to visit Danish folk high schools. I accompanied the small group of my students who went to the ceramics studio at the folk high school where we visited. And so students got a chance to try out throwing clay. And it was this kind of fascinating thing where I was simultaneously like envious that I wasn't one of the ones sitting at the wheel because there were only 4 stations, but also fascinated by watching my students like work on learning something completely different than what we were working on in class. And the folk high schools are a wonderful Danish institution that fascinated the students and made them, I think, want to come home and revolutionize the American education system. This is an institution that it involves no grades and no exams. You can go anytime from when you're 18 to when you're 80 or beyond. And something like 1 in 10 Danish people are at a folk high school at any point. And so we were at a school where there were people seemed to be mostly in their 20s, as far as we could guess, but students got a chance to talk to some Danish young people, and they fed us lunch, and it was pretty terrific. Sergei's group also went to a folk high school, a different one, and had a chance to talk about Danish politics with students and to learn about American politics along the way. And one of the things that happened with my group at our folk high school is that there was a kind of spontaneously generated pickup game of soccer, which was terrific. I was tempted to show you all the video, but instead I will show you just a still image. A couple people aren't in this image. One of them was the goalie, and the other I think was just out of the frame. But this otherwise is most of my class. Everyone got involved. It was terrific, and then, like, within that same day, and this has been very much, I think, our experience here, like we visited a folk high school, there was a pickup game of soccer. We also then saw a bog body that is thousands of years old, and talked about the Irish poet Seamus Heaney and his poem, The Tolland Man. This is the Tolland Man, who was found in a peat bog in northern Denmark. And then also went to the highest point in Denmark, which is not actually very high up, but is very beautiful. And so we climbed the highest mountain in Denmark, and here are my exuberant students having done that climb. So Sergei's group climbed to the top of Riva Cathedral as well. Here they all are on top of their high point. The high point that Professor Alexander's group climbed was more precarious and maybe more adventurous. It was this wind turbine. Professor Lopez's group also climbed a high thing. They went up the forest tower in the northwest of this part of Denmark, and it's this kind of incredible structure that takes you up sort of high up into trees. But here are Annie's images from the long study tour, and now the image of people up in the wind turbine, high above Denmark. So this, students have had a chance to do adventurous and exciting things, and have really seemed to thrive, and have literally, in this case, risen to the occasion of these exciting opportunities. There also have been chances for students to go to a range of art museums. Here are 3 students in a rainbow panorama on top of the Aros Museum in Aarhus. This was toward the end of our study tour. Annie, what is happening in this image? Is this after the bonfire?
Yes, that was, well, I think it was a little before the bonfire, but
Okay.
all the students were just hanging out and singing some songs, and it was just so picturesque. I had to snap this photo. It's a really great community that we're building, and I think the students are really loving their time here, but also are very excited to go to Kenyon next semester and keep those bonds and relationships forever. Some of the students I've talked to, they're like, these are gonna be my friends for life. Like, no one else has done this. We're the first people, and like, we'll always have that forever. I'm like, you're right. Yeah, this is really special.
Yeah. And I think the students have a sense of how special it is. I asked my students if they wanted to say anything to alums, and 2 of them gave me reflections, and I wanted to share them with you. So I'm just going to give voice to these, because I think that this is pretty striking. So one student says, the Kenyon-Copenhagen experience has truly been amazing so far. As a person who comes from a place that is very inaccessible, it's fantastic to be able to leave my house and take the metro basically whenever I want, wherever I want. It gives me this newfound freedom that I couldn't have found back both at my home and in Gambier. I've also felt free and not ashamed to experiment with things I never would have experimented with back at home. Things like religion, what I want to do when I'm older, newfound emotions, and even old found ones coming back after years of not experiencing them. I've come to learn that having support systems is so incredibly important. Copenhagen has taught me not to be afraid to experiment with parts of myself I know nothing about. It also, in a way, has taught me how to take care of myself. There have been some things that have arisen while I've been here that I don't have the tools for yet. Learning how to navigate those things in ways that work for me has been incredibly important, as I now know what I can do if they arise again. Copenhagen truly has changed me for the better. I couldn't recommend it enough if I tried. And another student says, this program has been truly amazing. For students that want to travel, experience the world, and become more culturally knowledgeable and proficient, this program is perfect. I've learned so much about people's different ways of life. I've also been able to meet so many amazing people that I never would have gotten to meet in the United States. This experience has also given me a true sense of independence and made me feel more ready for the real world. In addition, this program has made student-staff relationships important and easy to form. The options for courses for this semester were limited compared to what is offered at Kenyon, which was actually nice because it made registering for classes very simple. However, I'm really enjoying looking at all of the classes offered for next semester back in Ohio. This semester has been a fantastic experience so far, and I am excited to see what campus life is like back at Kenyon. And one of the things we wanted to stress was that, though we're here in Copenhagen, students also have a strong sense of themselves as Kenyon students. And so here's an image of 3 of my students when we're here perched at the highest point in Denmark, in their Kenyon gear with their Kenyon-Copenhagen water bottle. Like they are not just wearing Kenyon shirts, they're also eager to get back to Gambier and to get to know the other members of their class, and to get to know the way that life works in Gambier, having had the experience of getting to know the way life works in Copenhagen. And so this is one of the other things that has happened that especially those of you who are parents should know about is that we've just come off of a kind of long mid-semester break because most DIS students were doing a long study tour that ran all through last week. We did not have a long study tour, so we were on a break. And so a lot of students traveled kind of to a range of places in Europe. And one of the things that they came back saying on Monday was, now I know what my family, like what my parents do when we travel. Like now I understand more about what goes into, doing the logistical work of just moving yourself around in the world. So I've instructed them to express their gratitude to you. So those of you who are parents of students in my class, I hope that they will, but they are grateful to you even if they don't tell you. So we're right now in the thick of doing things like talking with students about courses for next semester. They have advisors back at Kenyon they're working with. We're also, they're starting to get information about orientation in January. They should be getting information anytime now about housing for next semester. So the end is coming. The end of this phase of things is coming. We're also as a campus thinking about the future of this program. So there's a faculty forum that's coming up in a couple of weeks to discuss this program, and I assume the possibility of programs like it. And also there's a survey that Professor Lopez put together with Cheryl Hemkin, who's one of our associate provosts back at Kenyon, to study the first year experience that students are having. But that's one of the things we want to do is see, should there be Kenyon-Copenhagen forever? This was graffiti that students left in the Moon's Clint Geo Center when we were on the trip. This is our final image, but I wanted you to have a sense that even in mid-September, the students were already very fond of this program and fond of each other. And so even if this is the only time this program runs, in their hearts, we hope that Kenyon-Copenhagen will go on forever. So that is the end of that show. We'll come back out here and see if anybody has any questions you want to ask or anything else you want to hear about.
Sarah, we had one question in the chat already,
Okay.
and that was whether we would talk a little bit about students registering for classes back in Kenyon and making the transition back. And I'll just jump in to say, really reiterating what Sarah was saying, that they have advisors back at Kenyon that they're talking to about registration, which will take place toward the end of next week. But that we also are sitting down with the students and talking with them about classes. And so in effect, what they get is a sort of double advising system. And I suspect, Annie, if you haven't yet been recruited to talk with students about classes and give your insights into classes, that will probably happen as well. They're obviously looking forward to getting more information about housing and whether they will be housed together or whether they will be, scattered through the larger first-year housing. Those decisions are being made back at Kenyon, but we're doing our best to basically help them to recognize that they are a closely bonded group at this point, and that whatever their housing situation, they arrive at Kenyon in January with this incredible cohort of friends who have gotten very close. This is an ideal way, it strikes me, to enter into that large group of Kenyon students who have already begun on campus, in the sense that they're going to have this group of friends to rely on, but they're also going to be able to then disperse through the rest of the Kenyon campus and begin to add to that group of friends, the new friends that they'll make there. Sarah, Annie, do you want to add anything more about that?
The only thing I'll say is that, we're one of the things that the four of us as resident directors are planning to do is be as much a part of the January orientation of students on campus as we are allowed to be. So, just recognizing that we are we're the faculty that students know, and that having familiar faces, may well be a really comforting thing. And so in a sense, we were waiting to receive them on this end. And then when they come to Gambier in January, we'll be waiting to receive them there too.
There have been a couple of other questions here, including having an orientation. As Sarah mentioned, there will be an orientation for them. When
And they
return.
will be returning early. They will return to campus a couple of days early for that. So it's, I want to say that students normally would move into their rooms, maybe Sunday, or would come back, like on Sunday, Saturday or Sunday for the spring semester. We don't know. I'm sorry, Scott. But they should have that information fairly soon. My memory is that it's either Thursday or Friday of the week before classes start. But there should be a dispatch from Don Miller, who's the director for the first year experience, anytime now. They were holding that dispatch back, it turns out, because we were all traveling last week. And so they didn't want it to disappear while the students were traveling. But that information should be coming really soon. And we can reiterate also that you had questions tonight, that they should get that information to you so you can make plans.
I don't yet know if there has been discussion of having something like the activities fair for this group in the spring, but we can certainly pass that on to the people at Kenyon who would be responsible for organizing something like that. And a lot of this will also happen through students meeting other students and joining organizations that way. The COVID, there's a question here about the students' experience navigating COVID during their stay in Denmark. One of the really amazing things for this program has been that for the first 2.5 months of this program, the COVID situation here in Denmark was remarkably good. That is to say, it was like life as normal. That has, unfortunately, as it has throughout Europe, begun to change in the last few weeks. But the Danish government is sort of jumping on it as we speak. Reintroducing things like their Corona Pass, which requires showing proof of vaccination to enter into restaurants and movies and things like that. And also very likely we are given to understand additional steps that they are taking to make sure that the numbers stay within reason. Denmark is very highly vaccinated. They have a high vaccination rate. But like other countries, there are still some people who are not vaccinated, and the numbers seem to be largely the unvaccinated population here in Denmark, and also to some extent school children. So I know that people here in Denmark are also waiting with bated breath for the approval of a childhood vaccine as well. So I guess what I would say is that they've been incredibly fortunate in that their experience of the pandemic for much of this program has been really very sort of easy. And now, in a way, they're having to begin to think about it in ways that are going to prepare them for having to go back to Kenyon and deal with the kinds of COVID restrictions that are routine now on American college campuses. Yeah, great to see Celeste in the photos. Celeste is great. She's loving her time there. I'm happy to hear about it. We'll be thrilled to see what Celeste is interested in doing once she gets back to campus. Are there other questions?
I see Louise has her hand up.
Hi, I feel like I probably am in a different position than anybody else here. I'm actually applying to Kenyon. I'm a senior in high school, and my mom is an alumni. And this is like the Kenyon-Copenhagen program was actually what made me choose between the two schools that were my top two for ED. And I decided that, like, even if potentially it doesn't exist anymore, like, it sounded like such a cool program that I wanted to make my decision for like applying early to Kenyon based on the program. And I was just wondering, I guess, from the perspective of a potential student, what kind of, like, if there was what kind of criteria there was for admission to the program, or if it was just based on like if you wanted to participate.
I mean, for this year, it was based on if you wanted to participate, if you like, yeah, I mean, we really, and the fact that the program grew from being the 25 to 30, we initially thought it would be, to being, 50. that was connected to the idea that if you had been admitted to Kenyon, you could be admitted to Kenyon-Copenhagen. And so the things that stood in the way of some people being able to come were like things that were not, it was stuff like if there was a complicated visa situation that, that worked against a few people. But it's, so what we don't know is, if the program will run again, and if so, if there would be a different kind of application procedure, right? Given that this is it would be a different situation potentially in a subsequent year. So that I have to say, that is a stay tuned, or don't watch this channel, right? Like, it's not, nothing will be happening here after this Zoom call ends, but that, I would say, express your interest and keep asking those questions, and the things that we were looking for and that we found in all of the applications for students who expressed interest in the program were, a real eagerness to learn, a sense of adventure, a willingness to jump in with both feet for a program that didn't exist yet, right? And to really become co-creators of this experience. And so again, I realize I don't want to sort of single out parents in the room, but since there are so many of you here, it's really like your students are amazing people, and they have really been going at this experience with all they've got in really admirable ways. And they're also really kind people, which has been, they are really good to each other, and that's, I think, to be commended. So they treat each other well. They move among sort of social groupings with each other in ways that are really wonderful. And it's been a genuine pleasure to work with them. So does that help answer your question, sort of, Louise, or at least like put some layers around it? And thank you for everything that you all have said in the chat. I suspect we should probably wrap up and let you all go back to your afternoons or your evenings, depending on where you are, and settle back into our 4th hour of darkness, now that it's Copenhagen in not daylight saving time, and the sun is down and out by 4. So thank you everyone for attending. It was great to get a chance to talk about this program at length. Thank you, those of you who sent your parents, sent your children here with us. We appreciate it, and look forward to meeting you in person at some point in Gambier in the future.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good
Thank
night.
you.